feel like I'm getting hammered.
Enter Natasha Howard, Sophie Cunningham, and Dawana Bonner, 3 veterans who bring toughness, experience, and a no-nonsense attitude to Indiana. Last season, teams tried to rough up Clark, but with these 3 on the floor, that strategy won't fly anymore. Howard is a former Defensive Player of the Year with championship experience, Cunningham brings energy and sharp shooting with an edge, and Bonner, she's a seasoned star who knows how to take over a game. The Fever aren't just here to compete, they're here to dominate. And this time, Clark won't have to fight alone.
So the Indiana Fever have got their enforcer. They have got their enforcer for Caitlin Clark. And I'm not gonna lie, like, when it comes to Caitlin Clark and their enforcer, last year everyone was talking about them needing an enforcer.
These aren't just veteran additions, they're a statement. Howard, a former Defensive Player of the Year, knows how to shut down the paint and won't hesitate to make her presence felt. Cunningham? She's a fearless competitor who brings both grit and deadly accuracy from beyond the arc. And Bonner, a proven winner, adds veteran leadership and the kind of two-way dominance that can swing a game. With this trio backing Clark, the Fever aren't just protecting their star, they're building a squad that plays tough, fast, and fearless. Indiana isn't here to take hits anymore. They're here to hit back.
The closest thing they had was Erica Wheeler. That was the closest thing they had for someone to defend Caitlin Clark was Erica freaking Wheeler. Maybe Tammy, but Caitlin Clark was getting hit a lot. She was getting hit a lot early and they needed their Charles Oakley.
The Fever aren't just stacking talent, they're sending a message. They're not here to blend in, they're here to dominate. With these new additions, they've crafted a team that's quick, tough, and fully prepared to have their stars back. Clark's critics? They've been warned, but what makes these 3 players the key to turning Indiana into a WNBA powerhouse? Let's dive in.
Sometimes you need one of those players on your team. You need one of those enforcers. Every good player, by the way. Every good player, every good team that is a super duper star. Most of the time have enforcer type player.
Picture this. Caitlin Clark, the most electrifying rookie the WNBA has seen in years, takes the floor for her debut season. The energy is electric, the fans are on their feet, and all eyes are locked on her, but instead of a warm welcome, she's hit with brutal fouls, non-stop pressure, and physical play that feels more like a statement than competition. Was this just tough defense, or was something bigger at play?
That's all I see. They try so long to get respect for women's basketball, and then they treat it like a junior high school girl's locker room. Junior high school girl antics on the court.
Let's break it down. This wasn't just the usual rookie initiation. Clark faced a level of physicality that went beyond competition. Hard fouls, body checks, and unnecessary hits became a constant in her game. At times, it felt less like basketball and more like a battle for survival. But here's where it gets wild. Clark wasn't just adjusting to the league's toughness. She was a target. The stats say it all. An eye-opening 107% of all flagrant fouls last season were committed against her. That's not just physical defense. That's a statement. And players made sure she got the message.
Now, what little girl wants to grow up and play in a league where you're targeted like that? How do you sit here and profess and demand that everyone take women's sports seriously when you can't even take it seriously enough to not act like a junior high queen on the court? It's stupid. That's so dumb. It looks like a soap opera.
Isn't it? At the heart of it all, the Chicago Sky. A jaw-dropping 80% of those flagrant fouls against Clark came from a single team. Coincidence? Not a chance. This wasn't just tough defense, it was a calculated effort. But why? Was it an attempt to rattle her, a sign of frustration, or an old-school tactic to break down a rising superstar? Whatever the reason, one thing was crystal clear. Clark wasn't just another rookie. She was a game changer, and some players wanted to make sure she knew it.
Clark! Hammer!
One of the most shocking moments, Angel Reese was right in the middle of it. Picture this. Clark cuts through the lane, locked in on the basket, then bam! Reese delivers a hit that sends her crashing to the floor. The arena goes silent. Fans hold their breath. Would she get up? The foul was so brutal that even the commentators questioned, had this crossed the line? But Clark? She's built different. She shook it off, got back on her feet, and kept playing like nothing happened.
We went up really strong a lot of times, and we didn't get a lot of calls. And going back and looking at the film, I've seen a lot of calls that weren't made. I guess some people got a special way.
That's what makes Clark different. She never loses focus. While the debate raged on about whether the hits were too much, she stayed locked in. Even after taking a blatant cheap shot from Kennedy Carter, Clark's response was calm and direct. That's just not a basketball play, but you've got to play through it. No complaints, no drama, just the kind of mental toughness that turns great players into legends.
And Clark. I mean, that's clearly a foul, which was called. The question is, will they call it unnecessary? Kennedy Carter.
Clark showed she could take the hits, but Indiana's front office knew she shouldn't have to do it alone. So they made a bold move. A big one. By adding tough, battle-tested enforcers, the Fever sent a loud and clear message. Cheap shots and dirty plays stop here. But who are these new reinforcements? And how will they transform the Fever's identity? Let's break it all down.
And Clark.
The signing of Natasha Howard represents a massive step forward for the Indiana Fever and their quest for a championship. In Howard, the Fever gain a three-time WNBA champion, a Defensive Player of the Year, an All-Star, and a veteran with more than 300 games played.
Natasha Howard isn't just a new face in Indiana. She's the enforcer this team desperately needed. From the moment she stepped into the locker room, the message was clear. Caitlin Clark is no longer an easy target. For those who don't know, Howard is a three-time WNBA champion, a former Defensive Player of the Year, and a relentless competitor who plays with grit and intensity. She's not here for headlines. She's here to make sure no one bullies Clark ever again.
But all of that, and we haven't yet touched upon what Howard does best: defend. Howard was named Defensive Player of the Year in 2019 and has finished in the top 10 of the Defensive Player of the Year voting 3 times in her career. Howard has averaged at least 1 block and 1 steal per game in each of her last 7 seasons. And that versatility is really what makes her a weapon on defense.
Last season, defenders came at Clark with zero hesitation, thinking they could rough her up without consequences. This season, they'll have to think twice. Natasha Howard's presence alone changes the game. Just standing next to Clark, she commands respect. But she's more than just an enforcer. She's a difference maker on both ends of the floor.
Last season, with a minimum of 25 games played, Natasha Howard was one of just 13 players to average 18 points per game. She was one of 16 players to average 7 rebounds per game. And the list of players to average both 18 and 7 last year: short and elite. Asia Wilson, Breanna Stewart, Nafisa Collier, Brittany Griner, and yes, Natasha Howard.
Her numbers last season say it all: 17.6 points, 6.7 rebounds, and nearly 3 assists per game. That's elite production. And here's the best part: she stretches the floor. With Howard's ability to knock down shots from deep, she'll create even more space for Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, and Aaliyah Boston to dominate.
But that wingspan and 6'2" height allows her to be disruptive defensively around the rim on opposing bigs too. In fact, Howard will enter the 2025 season 25th all-time in blocks in WNBA history.
Howard's biggest impact? Defense. She's not just good, she's a game wrecker. The 2019 Defensive Player of the Year built her career on shutting down elite scorers, protecting the paint, and setting a physical tone that makes opponents think twice before driving inside. Her length, strength, and relentless energy make her a nightmare for anyone trying to score.
Caitlin Clark was getting hit a lot. She was getting hit a lot early, and they needed their Charles Oakley. You've got that in Sophie Cunningham.
And when it comes to protecting her teammates, she won't hesitate to send a message. But her greatest weapon? Championship experience. The Fever are young, talented, and hungry. But deep playoff runs demand more than raw skill. They require poise, leadership, and a winning mentality. With over 50 postseason games under her belt, Howard knows exactly what it takes to thrive when the stakes are at their highest. Now, she's bringing that edge straight to Indiana.
There were videos, there are so many videos of Sophie Cunningham just starting brawls. Sophie Cunningham, in general, is just wild. Wild is the best word I can use to describe Sophie Cunningham. And it is just, it's carnage. Like, it's carnage a lot of the time when Sophie Cunningham gets involved with anything. The amount of fights that Sophie Cunningham has been involved in is mental.
Howard's energy is a perfect match for the Fever's rising momentum. In her own words, "I'm excited to return to Indiana and bring my experience and toughness to the team. I want to help Caitlin and the Fever compete at the highest level." And that's exactly what she intends to do. This move isn't just about protecting Clark, it's about unlocking her full potential. Howard has seen it all, won championships, and now she's here to teach Indiana what it takes to win. With her in the mix, the Fever aren't just standing their ground, they're taking over.
She hits a three, Maisha Hines-Allen fouls her, and then tries to step over, and then Sophie Cunningham grabs her leg. Nobody's going near Maisha Hines-Allen, but no, Sophie Cunningham will start the fight. The refs are trying to break it up. None of the Mercury players are going to go near Maisha Hines-Allen. They're scared. She's scared the bejesus out of them. Maisha Hines-Allen is one of the toughest players in this league. Sophie Cunningham going head to head straight with her.
Sophie Cunningham has arrived in Indiana, and things are about to get fiery. If Caitlin Clark needed a tough, fearless competitor who can drain threes and never back down, she just got the perfect teammate. This offseason, the Fever weren't just adding talent, they were building an edge. And with Cunningham, they found a player who brings skill, toughness, and a whole lot of attitude.
Sophie Cunningham, there are so many things where it's like, part of it her fault, part of it not her fault, but she will not back down. She will not back down under any circumstances from anything. And that is what the Indiana Fever need. If somebody hits Caitlin Clark, if somebody does what Victoria Vivians did to Caitlin Clark, it's not going to be Caitlin Clark that's getting involved to be teed up. Sophie Cunningham's in there. You take the technical foul. You take it.
Some might be thinking, Sophie Cunningham? Wasn't she the one trying to recruit Caitlin Clark to Phoenix? Well, Clark had other plans. Instead of heading west, she made sure Cunningham came to Indiana. This wasn't just a routine off-season move. It was a statement. The Fever needed energy, attitude, and relentless toughness. And with Cunningham, they got all that, and then some.
Like, Sophie Cunningham is guarding the screen here, and she just takes a hard hit. Nothing major. So she's down. And then, after taking a hard hit, just gets back up and laughs. Gets back up and laughs.
Let's talk about why Sophie Cunningham is the perfect fit for the Fever first, her shooting. She's not just tough, she's a serious threat from beyond the arc. Last season, she knocked down 37.8% of her threes, and with Clark setting her up, that number could climb even higher. Now picture this. Defenses are scrambling to contain Clark and Mitchell, and there's Cunningham waiting on the perimeter, ready to drill the open shot. Defenders? They're in for a long season.